Retro.
Hello there. This is James Arnold Taylor, the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and whenever I'm in this part of the galaxy, I listen to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust. Makes flying a little more tolerable. Don't tell Anakin.
Welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
And we are starting this week with a look at another episode of the Clone Wars as part of our rewatch. But before we get into Jar Jar's big adventure on Naboo, Jay, you want to remind everybody where we can be found on social media?
We saw on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust.
I think you mean we saw on Pod. Gotta do his deep voice. But all right. Right. The dish is aligned, the signal's boosted to maximum output, the shield is down, we are now broadcasting the galaxy. So we are discussing episode 4 from season 4 of the Clone Wars. This is called Shadow Warrior, which is a weird title until you find out why. But at any rate, before we get into discussion, you want to go ahead and give us the summary of the episode.
Sure will. When news reaches the Republic that the Gungans are prepared to join the Separatists and march on the city of Theta Naboo, Senator Padmé Amidala and Jedi General Anakin Skywalker are dispatched to handle the problem. With the aid of Jar Jar Binks, they discover that Gungan boss Leone is under the influence of Minister Risha Loo, who is secretly working with Count Dooku. In the ensuing confrontation, Boss Leone is injured, and Jar Jar, who resembles him, takes his place in convincing the Gungans to stand down. The crisis is not over there, though. General Grievous desires a meeting with Boss Leone to find out why the invasion was called off. This leads to the capture of Grievous by the Gungans. However, Anakin is lured into a trap where he is captured by Count Dooku. Padmé reluctantly agrees to swap prisoners as the episode concludes.
So there you have it. What do you think about this episode overall, Jay?
I completely forgot that this episode existed, Dennis. I'm not going to lie. And I'm very pleasantly pleased in some ways that I did, because I felt like I was obviously watching this for the first time. And I really enjoyed it. So, there was some things about it that, obviously are in there to kind of propel certain ideas forward. But I liked seeing Jar Jar as kind of the hero. And I also liked being able to see the Gungans once again in their role as defenders of not only, as we just saw with the Mon Calamari, but also for themselves and to stand up for themselves as well. And as we're going to talk about here, they actually pull off a really big feat with Grievous. So yeah, I really liked this episode. But what do you think?
So I did not forget that this episode existed. I forgot that it was just one episode. My memories is that the first half was an episode and the second half of this episode was its own episode. And so when I was watching it this time around, my initial reaction is like, this is ridiculous. This whole Jar Jar being able to fool everybody, whether it's other Gungans, Grievous, or whatever. I'm just not buying it. But then I got to thinking, this is what, Dave Filoni on the episode featurette, there was a Q&A like he did for the first 3 episodes where he answered a question about this episode and 2 other ones. And so anyways, he revealed that George Lucas came up with this idea of Leone, whatever, that, this whole swapping personalities was something that George Lucas wanted to do. And it was a nod to an Akira Kurosawa film where a lowly criminal impersonates a dying warlord. And so that's why it's called Shadow Warrior. It's because it's inspired by that, because otherwise there is no Shadow Warrior in this episode. But okay, couple things. We've seen Jar Jar with his crazy antics that substitute for diplomacy when he and Bail Organa went to Toydaria and created a distraction so that emergency supplies could get to Ryloth, and he's stacking cups and plates and being ridiculous like that. And now we get this episode where he's clumsily trying to impersonate Leone, and it's more of a sitcom idea than I feel like it's a Star Wars idea. As you and I talk about all the time, there's an appropriate level of Star Wars humor, and this one seemed like get right up to that edge if it didn't already cross it for me. And on top of that, the beginning of this season is Anakin and Padmé going to Mon Cala to try and stop a civil war between the Corn and the Mon Calamari on that planet. Now they're on Naboo trying to prevent a civil war between the Gungans and the Naboo. Like, what is going on? Every planet
Good
that has
point.
students, yeah. And so
Yeah.
who do we dispatch? The two people we should not put in the same room together if we have a fear that a Jedi is not going to pay attention to his vows and not give into attachment. Okay, I'm ranting. But beyond that, you get to the second half of the movie and you get the Gungans taking on Grievous, and then you get this great confrontation between Dooku and Anakin where all these other Magnadroids are brought into it. And that part is so cool. So for me, it's like, it really is, this episode is a tale of two halves. I give the first half a C-. I give the second half an A+. And so it balances out to a B along there. And frankly, I feel like they could have tweaked that first half a little bit and it would have been even better when it comes down to it. But one last thing, and I'll turn the floor back over to you. The episode guide in the trivia section did mention that this episode is intended to take place before the Mon Cala arc. And the reason why is that at that point, Boss Leone is still in charge of the Gungans, and he is not the least bit reluctant to send the Gungans to, after, Jar Jar says, hey, those are our friends, we need to go help them. Padme's been one of our big supporters, and then he sends the Gungans no problems, where it doesn't make as much sense for him to suddenly be reluctant in this case, even though he's being influenced by somebody. So anyway, I've talked a lot. What's your reaction to all that?
Well, I think, what you were saying about the first half versus the second half of the episode is probably why you remembered this as being two episodes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So because it does very much transition from a certain tone to a different tone, about partway through. But yeah, I think that the episode itself can be enjoyable on its own, but looking at the trivia guide, listening to Dave Filoni, and really kind of diving into the trivia and the why behind this, I think really enriches this episode. And understanding, like you were pointing out, the Akira Kurosawa thing with the Shadow Warrior. And of course, we know that George Lucas has always had a nod to those kinds of things. But I love the fact that George Lucas just wanted to kind of use the assets for Jar Jar again, like to give him just another job to do. And so that's why they actually used a lot of the same assets of Jar Jar for Boss Leone, which I thought was kind of fun. But you're right. I mean, it's very, very edge of the comedic kind of appropriateness line in a lot of ways, but it's Jar Jar. So I guess that's where I can kind of excuse that. But I will give them props for a few things in this episode. One, again, keeping the idea that Anakin and Grievous never meet until Revenge of the Sith. And so, they're kind of like crossing paths, as they're being exchanged sort of thing, but they still never met up with each other. So I love that. And I also really appreciate the fact that, and I know we're going to get into the whole Count Dooku thing, but he is just fiercely honest with the Sith are taking over kind of thing. He told Obi-Wan in Attack of the Clones that the Senate is being controlled by a Sith Lord. And he's telling Anakin the same thing in this episode. And he's being bluntly, brutally honest, but yet no one wants to believe him kind of thing. Which is,
yeah, I guess, Right. I guess my response is that we have to be careful in giving him that credit, because it's not like he is doing that out of the goodness of his heart.
No,
It's
no, not at
with
all.
Obi-Wan, it was an attempt to corrupt Obi-Wan and go take out Palpatine so he could put himself in his place, or to make Obi-Wan his own potential apprentice that could eventually sometime overthrow Sidious. And in this case, it's just it's a it's a bragging type of a thing here. It's like him telling Anakin he loses nothing. And the thing is that he's not even outing himself as the Sith in this. This is a revelation that comes later, that they discover Count Dooku is the Sith. Everyone just thinks he's fallen to the dark side at this point, which is weird that they have not put two and two together. There's Sith running around there, and Dooku's one of them, even though he's using a red lightsaber. But anyway, the last thing I just want to say about this whole Boss Leone thing is that, okay, I get it. You want to pay homage to this Akira Kurosawa thing. But, if you think about Jar Jar in The Phantom Menace, it is his, he was exiled because he was clumsy. All right. And ultimately, it's him being him and some of his clumsiness that saves the day. He pulls down the gate on that giant cart of the big, Goombas, and, that helps destroy some of the droids. He's, in this case, it's him trying to suppress his clumsiness. And so it's just it's the opposite type of thing, but it still comes off the same way. He's trying to do this imitation of Leone, and his voice keeps slipping, and then he covers for it until Grievous is like, "Who are you? You're not Leone." And so anyway, I don't know. I can forgive it, but I would like to see more instances of Jar Jar. How to say it? Him contributing to the story where it's him not just kind of being buffoonish, if you know what I mean. It's
Mhm.
he's got the biggest heart. And in the last arc, he convinces Leone to send help, because how can we not? Padme's been one of our best friends and our biggest supporters. Let him
Right.
have more moments like that in this situation. So, okay, that is what it is. Minister Risha Loo, wasted opportunity for this character here, because he's got some artifact that is allowing him to essentially influence and control Boss Leone there. They figured out pretty quickly, they confront him, and then they've pretty much ended that arc. But I don't know about you, but with all the different sects of Force mysticism that there are in the galaxy, and the fact this is a character that they really could have used more and really developed and given, they could have made an entire episode out of that and really enhanced the first half of this episode.
Oh, I agree, because I was, of course, watching this thinking, all right, what is up with this necklace? And how did this become imbued with this ability to take over Boss Leone's mind? And,
Mhm.
obviously this was either some sort of like night sister magic kind of thing, or it was potentially some sort of force imbued kind of thing. So
Mhm.
yeah, I agree that there could have been a lot more to this, and that's unfortunate that there wasn't.
Yeah. And as far as I know, he never showed up again in Star Wars anywhere. That
Mhm.
I could be wrong. I didn't check the Wikipedia page for that. Um, but moving on, uh, okay, the second half of the episode where this really, really shines. I love the fact that it starts this way, is that, Grievous departs his ship after Jar Jar's run off it, and now he's surrounded by the Gungans. And Grievous's response is, "You can't be serious in this situation." He completely underestimates them. But and the Gungans are victorious, but it comes at a major cost. You know, General Tarpals at this point
Yes.
sacrifices himself, and so that he can basically get Grievous pinned in one place, and then they throw the Boombas at Grievous and basically completely disable him and capture him. They show the quality of what the Gungan warriors are in this situation in a way that surpasses, in my opinion, what they did in the Phantom Menace, and really made a species that were kind of like the way that we thought of Ewoks initially after the original trilogy, that were kind of a laughingstock and something that should be feared and respected. It's almost too bad that this did not air before the Mon Cala arc, so we could have really appreciated the lethality of the Gungans before they showed up on Mon Cala to try and save the day.
No, I totally agree. And I think it was an interesting choice because they said that there was more action in the Mon Cala episodes, but the last half of this particular episode, like you said, was just phenomenal. And as I was saying earlier at the outset of the episode, this is very impressive because they did something that most people could never do, and that is to capture Grievous. And they did it in such a way that it was very, exclamation point definitive, this is happening. But I agree, it was a big loss to see General Tarpals sacrifice himself, but he did it in a glorious way, I will say.
Yeah, I just wish we could have got more from the Clone Wars, because
Yeah,
I don't remember him showing up in the Clone Wars prior to this. And so we got him here for an episode,
right.
which is unfortunate. And the other thing is they could have used him in additional episodes after this, because they never committed themselves to tearing everything in the order, in the episode order. We just see it in this season. This is the 4th episode, but it takes place before the first 3.
Exactly.
So, no reason they couldn't have brought him back.
Exactly. Yeah. Missed opportunity again. That's for sure.
Then Dooku murders Risha Loo. So again, a lot of characters here that we just don't get an opportunity to get to know better than we do. And then Anakin goes off to track down Risha Loo, and he ends up in this hideout where Dooku is, and we come to learn this is where Sidious had originally set up a little Sith alcove, for lack of a better description. And this is preceded by Dooku having a question with Sidious, and Sidious is going on about how much he wants Grievous back, that he's important to his plans, which is weird because I never think of Sidious like, other than coveting Anakin as an apprentice, really caring about getting some particular person back. He tells Dooku to get rid of Asajj Ventress last season, and because she's failed too many times, she's got aspirations, she could be a threat to their hierarchy of Sith, whatever. But he definitely wants Grievous back, and so we need to effectuate that by making some sort of a prisoner trade. And what's especially revealing for the overall story in Star Wars is that Sidious suggests capturing Anakin Skywalker and then exchanging him for Grievous. And Dooku's response is like, I don't know that Senator Amidala will go for that. And Sidious's response is, I'm pretty confident she will. And so we know the Chancellor / Sidious knows about Anakin and Padme. It's part of his whole seduction to the dark side storyline in Revenge of the Sith. But he never shared that information with Dooku.
Right.
He never shared that information with Dooku, apparently. Which, why do you think that is? It's because it's, is that revealing something to Dooku that, is that going to get Dooku thinking, oh, he's already found my successor? Or Dooku is going to try and use that for his own gain? What do you think the reason is?
Oh, I think it's the ace up his sleeve, because it is the one thing that he's controlling, kind of puppetry, kind of thing in the background with all of these decisions that he's making along the way. And yeah, I don't think he wants to reveal that to anyone. But I do think, to a couple things that you were saying, as far as, Grievous is concerned, we have seen, and we've talked about this before in previous Clone Wars episodes, that Grievous is really screwed up quite a lot. Like, he's wasted resources. He has failed missions. He has, done all these things, but yet Sidious continues to see him as this valuable player in all of it. And I'm almost wondering if it's because he's sort of the red herring to everything else that the Sith are doing. It's like, okay, look over here, watch Grievous while, the bad boy Sith are over here doing their thing. And so that's why he's almost more valuable to him alive and part of the equation than not. So, there's that too. And, as far as the whole Naboo thing goes,
Well, hold
I
on. I
just
want to respond to what you said
oh,
about
go
Grievous
go
real
ahead.
quick because
Yes,
it
yes,
gets you
yes.
that. Yeah,
Please.
we're on that
Mhm.
topic. It's part of the larger conversation that you and I have had about Grievous over the course of this podcast, where, one of the things we said is the most fearsome Grievous we've ever seen is the one that showed up in Genndy Tartakovsky's Clone Wars. At the end of that
Yes.
first season when he mangled a bunch of Jedi and then like incapacitated a bunch of others. And then it took a team of clone commandos to come in and save the day in that situation. But if you look back at his history over the course of this animated series, there's been a couple episodes where he's really messed up some Jedi. But as often as not, he was the villain he became the Saturday morning cartoon villain, right? The same one that the heroes fought every single time and they'd send packing and then, he twirls mustache and says, "I'll get you next time, He-Man." That's
Those
Skeletor, but
meddling
doesn't have a
kids.
right. Whatever the situation may be. But,
Yeah.
but then he started to come around. And I think we've had to have some of the recent episodes we've did so that the Gungans could be as impressive as they were in taking Grievous down in this situation. But yeah, I also getting back to the specific point we're making about why is Sidious so concerned about having Grievous around. I do think there's part of that because no one knows that Palpatine is Sidious. The focus of this war is on the two figureheads from the Separatist side, which is Dooku as the statesman of the Confederacy of Independent Systems / the Separatists, and Grievous as the general of their robotic army, their droid army in this situation. And so, if nothing else, he needs to keep this fierce general out there. He can't be captured. He can't be vulnerable. He needs to still be a symbol for the Separatists. If nothing else, I think that's his importance. Plus, it's another. The real long game is that, well, if Dooku can capture Anakin and then force Padme to trade the two, I'm just reinforcing that attachment for Anakin. It's going to be
Oh,
so much
yeah.
easier to drive him to the dark side later. But I'm sorry, I interrupted
100%.
you. Yeah, what was your next point that you were going to make?
No, you're good. Yeah, I was unpacking a lot of stuff there. So, just getting back to the idea that this is all happening on Naboo, because I mean, realistically, Naboo is the genesis for Anakin and Padme's relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and also where Palpatine is from, and also just getting back to as you were pointing out earlier with the Gungans and their ability to be the army that they are, and it's really kind of a pivotal point. It's more so than I ever really gave it credit for, after watching this episode, for sure.
Hypothetical. What if the Jedi had sent Obi-Wan with Padme as opposed to Anakin?
Would she have made the trade? Is that your question?
Would she made the trade? Would Sidious have recommended this plan to Dooku? What would have changed here in this
Ooh.
episode?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think that in some ways, I think that Padme would have still made the change, but I mean, she was debating even with Anakin. However, I think that she, in the end, might have believed that they would somehow make it out, or that they
Mm-hmm.
would somehow escape because they are who they are. But yeah, I think that if Obi-Wan would have been in place of Anakin, first of all, I don't know if he would have been lured into the trap that was set
Right.
as easily as Anakin was. Anakin is, unfortunately, he's all about getting back at Dooku
He says
because
strong.
of what he did to him in Attack of the Clones, And I was constantly thinking about that even too when they meet up with him again in Revenge of the Sith, and Obi-Wan says to Anakin, "We'll take them together this time. I was going to say that," and so it's all kind of leading up to that. So again, yeah, I think things could have been different in that way, but I'm not sure that the overall outcome necessarily would have been different.
Yeah, it's hard to say because
Yeah.
Padme wasn't, she was on the verge of saying we're not making the trade until Jar Jar appealed to her. How could we not?
Mhm.
He's our friend. And
Yeah.
and so they do it. And I kind of wonder if Jar Jar didn't have a suspicion, that he nudged her over the edge, gave her cover in a way for
Mm,
rescuing her husband. But,
mhm.
but the other thing is that Sidious specifically says, I have a feeling that the
Yeah,
senator, I shouldn't say specifically, but he basically says, I believe that Senator Amidala will make this trade,
right.
which also brings up what authority does Senator Amidala really have to trade such a high value prisoner without getting the permission of the Chancellor of the Republic?
Ooh,
Uh,
good point.
she acted in this moment, but I could see that being a political problem for her when she gets back to Coruscant.
Yeah. I wonder if she was thinking she has like eminent no domain because she is the senator from Naboo.
Yeah.
It's happening on her world kind of thing. I don't know. That's a good question.
Right. Another random thought about this, but we alluded to it a couple times already in this episode. But how is it that Anakin and Padme keep getting paired up for these missions in this?
Yeah, interesting, right?
I mean, we've seen plenty of instances already where, I'm thinking back. Oh, what was the former flame of Padme's when they're going to Cato Nymodia to
Oh, yes.
Rush
Clovis.
Clovis. Yeah.
Yep.
Rush Clovis. And, Padme and Anakin's like, I wasn't aware that Senator Amidala was ever involved in something. And then Yoda makes that comment like, why would you be aware of the senator's, dealings? And then Obi-Wan's in the background, they do a close up of his face and he raises that eyebrow,
Yes.
just like Anakin, so Obi-Wan knows. Obi-Wan's on the council. Why is he letting this continue to happen? I don't care that they've worked well together in the past, but he has to know, if he doesn't know that they're married, fine. But he has to know that this is not good for Anakin to keep putting someone he feels so strongly about, aside from his Padawan, on these missions with Padme.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. And I mean, obviously, at in the arena scene in Attack of the Clones, you can tell that Obi-Wan was very wise to everything that was going on.
Mhm.
And also in the hangar after their fight with Count Dooku, because Padme runs up to Anakin, and even Yoda's kind of like turning a blind eye to that one, which
See
is so
that we
weird
did
to me.
not.
Yeah, I
Right.
know. It's still so weird to me that's the case. So, I guess if we're looking at this from just a sheer storytelling perspective, it's just fun to see Anakin and Padme on screen in the Clone Wars. You can
Mhm.
leave it at that. But I mean, when you're looking at it as far as the whole grand scheme of things, yeah, it is a little weird that this keeps happening
Mhm. Mhm.
for sure.
And why didn't they send Ahsoka with them in this case? Because
Yeah, where is
uh,
she right now?
it, she was a key player in the Mancala arc, but
Exactly. Yeah.
why couldn't she have been just as useful in this situation as she was there? So I don't know.
Right, right.
But they decided to give Ashley Eckstein the week off from recording, I suppose.
She was
So
on
she didn't
vacation.
have any voice roles in this episode, as far as I could tell.
No, I don't think so. Was the same voice actor that did Risha Loo the same one that did Zero? Because there was some inflections to me that sounded so similar. Because Risha Loo actually had a bit of an accent that was very un-Gungan like to me. I mean, there was still
Mhm.
the Misas and the Wisas and the Yusas and that kind of thing, but there was that little drawl that you hear at the
Yes,
end.
that did. Now that you mention it, yeah, and it was Corey Burton who did them both. So yeah,
Okay.
good here.
Yep, yep.
You called that out, but yeah, there was, as much as they were trying to give him, I think more of a Cajun Creole type of an accent,
Mhm,
composed as opposed to like the Deep South accent that Zero the Hutt got. That did creep through a little bit between
mhm.
the two voices. So
Yep.
I noticed that part, but I hadn't thought that they were necessarily the same actor. But that's a good call.
I
Uh,
still wanna know where the necklace came from, though, that Richelieu gave to Boss Leone. Like, what
yeah.
what was the impetus of that, the genesis of that?
Well, previewing the next episode of this podcast, we'll get that answer when we find out what happened to Luke's hand and lightsaber when it left Cloud City. So
There you go.
that's a tease for next on Wednesday. You'll have to tune back in to find out what we're talking about.
That's right, that's right.
All right. Well, anything else you want to bring up before we wrap this one up?
I don't think so. I think
Okay.
we hit pretty much everything.
All right. Well, with that, thank you all for joining us for this episode of Podcast Stardust and this discussion of the Clone Wars. We hope you've enjoyed it. And if so, please consider subscribing to the podcast if you haven't done so already. We're pretty much available on all the podcatchers that are out there. We appreciate your ratings, your reviews, your comments, your likes, and other things that you can do to support the show. And Jay will give you another way to contact us here in just a minute. But if you want to find more episodes of Podcast Stardust beyond the 1 or 200 that are likely to be on your podcatcher, head over to retrozap.com. All previous 1,062 episodes can be found there, as well as all the other great shows that are on the Podcast Stardust network. So with those things in mind, Jay, I want to go ahead and remind everybody what our social media contacts are and how else they can reach us and find us on the internet.
You bet, Dennis. We're on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust. And we also maintain some Pinterest boards with all kinds of fun ideas for everything Star Wars. And then we also have our 2 YouTube outlets. So you can hit us up on the regular YouTube as well as YouTube Music. So once again, like, subscribe, share those out with your friends. And those do also support comments and the like. So we would love your reaction to this show as well as any others. And then we're also on other podcatchers and platforms as well, everything from Spotify and Audible to Amazon Music and everything in between. And you can also drop us a line at podcaststardust@gmail.com. So we'd love to hear your thoughts, any questions. You know, we were talking about doing a listener question episode, and we'd still love to do that. So if you'd like to hit us up over there, once again, that's podcaststardust@gmail.com. And then last but not least, we do have a TeePublic store where you can snag one of 7 different show logo designs available with Podcast Stardust logos on them. And the link to that will be in our show notes.
All right. Upcoming on the show, Wednesday is the next installment of the Force Awakens series. And we have got a great returning guest for that one. So make sure you check it out. And then on Friday, we are getting into the week's Star Wars news. So thanks for listening to episode 1063 of Podcast Stardust, everyone. Have a fantastic week, and until next time, may the Force be with you.